For assessment in computing, you're likely to draw on a whole range of different formative and summative techniques. For formative assessment, you probably have a good portfolio of techniques that you can use to track children's learning during a lesson, look back on what they've learnt in a lesson, to help them set targets, to help them reflect on what they've learnt. For summative assessment, it might be useful to draw on some more formal approaches to that. For CAS, their national CPD coordinator Mark Dorling, working with Matthew Walker, have put together the Progression Pathways framework. This takes the strands from CAS's original computer science curriculum and identifies very clear progression pathways within each of those strands, breaking the ideas from those strands up into fairly granular learning objectives or objectives for what a child should learn to indicate progress across that strand. And that starts from the beginning of Key Stage 1 all the way through to the end of Key Stage 3 and indeed beyond the Key Stage 3 requirements. They've used a colour-coded approach to that, with each of the bands across that being given a colour, much like karate belts perhaps. And that allows schools the flexibility to interpret those statements in such a way as to ascribe a level, if you still need to ascribe levels to measure children's progress through those strands of a computer science curriculum. There is in the national curriculum a statutory attainment target, even though the old level descriptors have now been removed and not replaced. The attainment target merely states that children by the end of the key stage should have learnt the matters, skills and processes that are specified in that particular programme of study. For CAS's primary guidance document, we took the statements from the programme of study and separated those out into three elements: the computer science, the information technology and the digital literacy, and again took the individual statements from the bullet points and put those into some order, from the easier statements at the beginning of Key Stage 1 through to the much more demanding ones at the top end of Key Stage 2. We've taken a pragmatic stance and labelled those 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So again, if you wanted to translate that assessment of attainment into a national curriculum level as was, you could still do so, although there's no mapping to the old levels in any sense there. And the idea is that you look at a piece of work that a child produces or the outcomes for a project and make your judgment from that as to what that demonstrates evidence of their attainment in terms of that content of the programme of study. So over the course of a key stage, you might be ticking off or shading in a number of those statements. And hopefully by the end of the key stage, the child will have mastered all of that content from the programme of study, and you'll have a body of evidence to support that judgment. One particularly interesting approach to assessment these days is that of the digital badge, and this draws on the approach to assessment that Scouts, Cubs, Brownies and Guides have been using for a long time now, of having clear published criteria for particular indicators of achievement or of attainment. And the digital badge takes that idea. So we might have a number of those statements together form something for which a digital badge could be awarded. Our UK company MakeWaves have a platform to allow children to submit evidence online, and for you as a teacher to review their evidence and form your own judgment as to whether that constitutes sufficient evidence to say that that badge, according to those criteria, has been awarded. And there are badges which link to both the Progression Pathways statement and those statements from the original programme of study for the statutory attainment target.